All right. Boom. New kind of video today. New kind of video. This is YouTube exclusive. I don't think this will make sense to go on Spotify because this is video. I'm going to be doing some screen sharing. I got some notes here that I'm going to share in this video as well. But this is all about my book writing process. And I got to make this video because I just had a huge breakthrough this morning. Today is Sunday, July 7th, 2024. It is currently 12:30 p.m. Jack is napping. We went to church this morning. He had a big morning, no nap. Chelsea's out meeting a potential doula client for some brunch. And I'm holding it down here at home. And I've got a few minutes. And I just figured I want to share this big breakthrough that I had this morning. And also just get into like, what is this process that I'm in? How am I going about writing this book? And what am I taking inspiration from? So, for starters here, let me just get into the breakthrough. So the breakthrough is that I actually know what the fuck this book is about, which might seem like a silly breakthrough, but what I realized over the past 3 days is as I have gotten into this creative process, some of the creativity that like I'm building and bringing in ideas and stuff, it can take me away from like the core main idea. And I have, of course, known that this book is some variation of what the hell happened for this 100-mile race in Zion, explaining tribal training and like how did this race even come to be, and then within that sharing my own story building tribal and getting into endurance myself. But I really didn't have like a very clear and concise understanding of what this book was. And I realized that I needed that because I was listening to this audiobook from Ryan Holiday called Perennial Seller. This is a really cool book. It's unlike anything else that Ryan Holiday has written. And it is basically on the idea of like, how do you build something or create something that can stand the test of time and that can essentially sell forever, right? That's a perennial seller, is that it's not something that's hot for a second and then forgotten about. And the book or the audiobook, right, that I'm listening to goes through all these different parts of that. But the number one thing that I took away from that was one sentence, one paragraph, one page. You need to be able to say in one sentence, what is this project? And then in one paragraph, you give a little bit more detail. And then for one page, of course, there's a bit more color in that as well. But my one sentence, I was like, what the fuck is this project, right? It's like Ryan Holiday frames it as like, this is a blank that does blank. So, for example, this is a book that what? What is it telling? What is it sharing, right? And so I had been in my own like notebook over the past couple of days. I'll share this up on the screen here if you can see this. Right? What is the Zion book? I went through like a ton of pages just writing and rewriting and massaging. What is the Zion book? The early iterations here. The story of me running a 100-mile ultra with 9 of my athletes with the goal to cross the finish line as a team. Kind of accurate, right? A little clunky. I didn't like love the way that that was all worded together, but that was kind of the idea. But then once I got to the one paragraph part, I was finding myself adding, oh, well, it also is telling the story of me building tribal and telling this, and this, which, right, the idea of going from one sentence to one paragraph is that you're adding detail, but like all of a sudden, as soon as I've got more space, right, beyond one sentence, I'm sort of saying that it's something else. I'm saying that it's this second story. And so I was really struggling on that over the past couple of days. I'm like, what is this thing? Like, I need to be really clear on this, and I need to be clear on like who it's for. And I'm finding that I'm struggling with direction on how to make more progress without really firmly knowing the core idea of this thing. So this was the next thing that I went through. So I got a bunch of these. These are like basically sketchpad pieces of paper. And I basically was just like, all right, fuck it. I need to get out of just like my notebook and I need to get to doing something that's a little bit more expressive. I can just write freely. I can cross shit out, right? I guess I could be doing all that in my notebook, but I really liked the idea of just getting out on some big piece of paper and just jotting a bunch of shit down. So I started out with this main text that's in Sharpie. What is this project? And here's what I had. This is a book that tells my story running a 100-mile ultramarathon with 9 of my athletes with the goal to stick together and cross the finish line as a team. Then I started talking to Chelsea out loud about this, and she's like, that doesn't seem like anything about what you've been writing already as you've been building this. Like, that doesn't seem like what this really is. And so I started to write down some other things that I wanted to include in the book, right? Like, they don't need to be like the core main idea, but like these other ideas that are kind of sprinkled around, right? Visually is how I was thinking about this. So I wrote down, the team creates space for deeper meaning to emerge beyond just personal performance in the race, right? Like, that's a team theme in Tribal, and that will be something that's included in the book, right? Then the other theme of the more you serve others, the deeper the meaning of the experience. Then I've also got how I built Tribal from a coaching business to a brand to a team. Then I've got my own business themes, which are being open to opportunity creates new and bigger opportunity. The second business theme of get it live and get it going, which I'm kind of wordsmithing with the idea of just go and figure it out along the way. I really like get it live and get it going. I think it's more tangible from like a business sense of like, I have this project, I need to get some version of this live right now. Just go, I think more about like a personal adventure kind of a thing, like almost me doing my first 70.3. Like, there was nothing to get live. I just had to sign up and just go and sign up for the mission and figure it out along the way, right? So I'm kind of figuring out between those two what I want the language to be. And the third is adapt and overcome. But as I'm then also like trying to bring in these team themes of the team adding a deeper layer of personal development through the endurance experience, then I started to write down endurance as my path to personal development and the team 100xing that process for athletes. And this is really the value, like when I'm getting into this stuff here that I'm about to share beyond that, this is the value of being able to brainstorm with somebody else. Because Chelsea was just sitting on the couch and I'm just like talking all of this shit out loud. And she's basically like, nothing about what you're saying is making sense. And I'm like, I know, I feel that in my head. That's why we're doing this. So like, we had to kind of go clunky through some of this, but it really led to this breakthrough that I got. So first, it was endurance as my path to personal development and the team 100xing that process for athletes. That's like kind of the big picture of what I'm looking to share, which I didn't really have synthesized until this. Beyond that, I've got how I've been able to help other people experience the same growth. I'm reading like right down this side here, right? The next one here is how I've organized and built a team around that idea. And then how Zion was proof of it happening in real life and on a massive scale. So I started, right back to the initial point here, I started by thinking that this project was really just about this race. But as I'm telling Chelsea that it's about the race, but I also want to add in how I built Tribal, and then I also want to add in my own endurance journey. She's like, it seems like it's just too much. And one other big tip that I've gotten lately, I've listened to a couple podcasts on writing. The How I Write podcast by David Perel. His two recent episodes, one is with Ryan Holiday and one is with this dude, Nat Eliason. And they are both super, super valuable in terms of like how to actually make progress on a book, how to construct the book, and then how to write well and in an engaging way. I took a lot out of those two podcasts. And one of the main things was that if you're getting advice from somebody on a book or just any kind of project, you really want to be getting advice from people who know what you are trying to do, right? Like, I don't just want to blab at Chelsea about all these different ideas and then her give me advice without her understanding my intention, right? Because I'm okay if I write this book and this thing doesn't do well, right? As long as I created what I want to create, right? So staying true to like what I want to be sharing in this process is super valuable. But also, as I've kind of been saying the whole time, I'm trying to figure out what the fuck it is that I'm building. So this was all of the groundwork that I did yesterday. And then this morning, I got up and I went back into my notebook, my journal here, and I had a really, really great breakthrough. Let me get back to this. So Where is this? Okay, so I had these. I basically took those four things and I clarified, right? So now I'm back into my own journal here. What is the Zion Project? This is a book that tells my story using endurance for personal development, how I started helping others experience the same growth, how I built a team around that idea, and how Zion was proof of it happening on a massive scale. So that was like me getting it down. I was going to intend to like kind of sharpen up the wording, at a future point, which I did later this morning. But I then went into labeling out all four of these key points. So Ryan's endurance journey, then how I started helping others, then how I built a team around the idea, and then how Zion was proof of it happening on a massive scale. So let me pause this right here, and I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I'm going to show you the Google Doc that I am building all this into. All right, so we are into my Google Doc draft. So before I share the clarified ideas here, I got to share my process on building this rough draft because I have set a deadline for myself to have my first draft completed by the Do Hard Things conference, which is in a month. It's August 8th. And I set that deadline probably 6 weeks ago, middle of May-ish, when like this really started to come together. And first things first is that I just thought I would be able to tackle this thing in a way quicker timeline. I am now viewing this as like a multiple year project, but I still want to have the first draft down and good to go. Not in terms of it being like perfect and ready, but just like get it live and get it going, right? Like that's kind of the theme here, right? Is like I need some version of this live. Otherwise, I'm going to find myself just like working on this in the dark, and who the fuck knows when anything comes to life, right? So I have shifted my idea of what this rough draft is going to be. The rough draft, I decided, this is the first thing that I've put into Google Docs. I'm doing every other piece of writing on Notion and then a little bit in Substack. I'm going to share that next. But I've decided that this book draft is going to basically be a big physical printout. I need a physical printout. Like that's going to be a big moment for me to be physically holding like kind of the first iteration of this. And I've got a lot of things already written that will be on the pages, but I will also leave space, just blank pages for similarly to like this process. Like when I'm in the creative process, like it's very important for me to have some type of ability to just like write out freehand, maybe even add some doodles, maybe even just add some quotes, maybe just like some bullets of some key stories. And I have really thought about that in terms of the chapters that are for the actual Zion race, because most of that content is still just living in the podcast that I did with all the athletes. Like I haven't written chapters for how the race went down. But for example, I'm thinking about like the Smith Mesa climb. Well, certainly a couple of things that stick out are the Josh Payne power surge, right? So like Josh Payne power surge, I can just hand write that. And I know like that's an idea that I want included in that chapter. I can draw the super steep fucking cliff that we were climbing up. Other things like that are how I'm thinking about getting this process live and then building on it. But let me just show you at least what came about for this. Let me see if I can zoom out here. Okay, boom. So this is what I have synthesized from this whole process with this big note card, and then what I had going on in my journal. So the crisp one sentence is, this is a book that tells the story of how I used endurance as my path to personal development, helped others experience the same growth, built a team around the idea, and how Zion 100 was proof of it happening on a massive scale. Now, of those four ideas, I've basically numbered those out here, Ryan's endurance journey. And then under that, I've added about 4 bullets for each that have at least the high level ideas. These don't have to be how it's presented. And maybe there will be things that I don't have here that will be included. I'm sure there will. And some of these might be pulled out, right? But at least in my own endurance journey, certainly my first day of my second corporate job at Instamed and overall feeling complacent and limited in life, signing up for my first 70.3, right? That was my big goal. I was looking for my spark in life. Then I broke my ankle, had a massive setback, and I was forced to put my attention on the process rather than the outcome in the finish line, because my whole goal in the beginning was just finish this race and probably move on, right? Um, After that, I have Starting Toasted Rye, where the endurance mindset helped me start my first business. Starting to help others. In the early stages of my endurance journey, it was just the people around me getting naturally interested in what I was doing because of the enthusiasm and the benefits that they were just seeing me experience, right? Like more confidence, certainly more fitness, finding more adventure in my life, having a lot more fun in life. Chelsea getting into riding with me. And then I had a few friends who just bought bikes. They didn't even live near me, but they just saw me riding a lot and bought bikes. Theme there is like starting small and really just having a few people around me interested in what I was doing. Then into me sharing content online. So like shifting from somebody who just consumes a lot of information and consumes stuff they like on the internet to somebody who is now creating stuff and establishing myself as a leader. Then into like launching my coaching business, how I landed my first clients, launching the Tribal brand and the Tribal website, and then ultimately coaching the Do Hard Things guys to Ironman Florida. That was like my first big break. Next section is like basically building out the team and really solidifying that around this idea of personal development through endurance. So this is going to be able to get into like some of the tactical business stuff that I've built out, like connecting athletes online with online tools like Discord, Circle, and Telegram, teaching endurance through philosophy. So I can bring in Goldstein's story here, how he and I got first synced up on the call pack that I picked up with him. Then, of course, into like creating the team gear, the merch, the kits, expanding the brand. I certainly could add in here like the magic moments that I've created for people. That's a big theme in business for me, is like, how can I create magic moments where people are surprised with something or seen in a way that they didn't expect? Some good examples of that would be the Tribal Mug Club that I created for the Ironman finishers, the gear drops that I've done, the Unity axes that I sent out over here on the backside, right? I've got the Unity axe up here, got the Tribal Mug Club. This is year two's mug, right? So these are things where it's like, oh shit, something just shows up in the mail, and what a cool thing that I'm a part of. Super stoked because over here to my right is what I'm sending out to the Chattanooga 70.3 group, and it is fucking awesome. And I have never done anything like that before, and people are going to be stoked as fuck to see that and get that and feel like they're a part of something that is totally unique. I can fucking guarantee you everything that I've already mentioned, nobody in endurance and nobody with a coaching business does, but this Chattanooga 70.3 thing, fucking nobody does that shit. And that is awesome. And I fucking love that. Okay. Then on to, organizing the athletes to race together. So I certainly want to bring in, right, the team experiences. They've been everything, right? So Ironman Florida 2022, then the full Mo, right? And that whole story of me being out on a business trip in Indy, not expecting to do the race, seeing this opportunity to go run a 50K with 4 or 5 of my athletes that are doing a 50K for the first time, jumping on that, and then that becoming the launching pad for Zion, going to Muncie 70.3. That will also tell the story of the Endurance Accelerator program that I launched. So I'll be able to share how I've kind of stacked all of these things and how one opportunity has always led to the next, right? And this is back to the theme of being open to opportunity creates new and bigger opportunity. And all of those things stack up together like so smoothly, which is really, really cool. And then number 4, Zion 100, basically being proof that all of this personal development was just happening on a massive scale, and that it happened on a massive scale at Zion. A couple of things I'll look to share in there are like how I organized the prep calls, really from the Endurance Accelerator learning and the Muncie 70.3 learning, and bringing all of the athletes together, in prep of the race, learning together, right? So that's just the idea of organizing people online. Then we had the team house, so I'll get to share all about that, the team podcast, the workshops that we did with the main theme of getting everybody together in person. We, of course, had the big goal of going 10 for 10, which really oriented us all to have a shared goal. Certainly then the race story, right, and the key athlete experiences and themes that happened along the way. The Josh Payne power surge would be a good example of that. And then overall, the theme, and this is kind of where I was getting a little bit stuck, because it was like, how am I clearly and concisely sharing that the team element to tribal basically 100x's the personal development that happens for us as individuals along this endurance journey. And seeing this now visually for me inside of the Zion 100 section, and really like kind of layered in at the end, to me, like kind of allows me to detach from having to like compact that so much, because that's a really big idea, and you need to have the groundwork laid before it, I feel, in order for that to make sense at all. And the key themes within that are service and shared experience. So this is what I have in my Google Doc, but there's nothing else. This is literally I have 2 pages, a cover page that I created, and then this. So next I'm going to get into my Notion and show you where a majority of this stuff is actually being built and written. So we will hop over there now. All right. So we are inside of my Notion workspace, whatever this is called, Notion. And this Zion book section has a shit ton packed into it. So this is actually just like live and functioning. Like I haven't even updated the 1 sentence or the 1 paragraph. But this is actually really good proof here of how much I was struggling specifically with that idea that like the team creates more meaning and experience. Like my 1 paragraph here, this is a book that presents the Zion experience as proof that endurance competition is a vehicle for personal development, and that participating as part of a team allows deeper meaning to emerge beyond just the race. The book tells the race story along with the story of Ryan Dreyer building tribal training from an online coaching service into a brand that evolved into a team, and how this team experience came to be. That is a bunch of bullshit. That is a bunch of jumbled, bumbled nonsense. Like, think about the clarity that I just shared on the last page that was visible right in the Google Doc. I've got it in my notes here, right? But it's like, no, it's Ryan's endurance journey, how I started helping others, how I built a team around the idea, and how Zion was proof of it happening in real life. That's basically it, and on a massive scale, right? So this is just a little bit of like my real life process, and how this is, how this is functioning for me in real time. So let me just scroll through here, because these are also, this is like kind of the big idea that I had initially landed on, and this was with the help of Goldstein and Matt Bank. Those guys were awesome, and we had a really valuable call where they basically allowed me to just take up an hour and just talk all about my ideas for the book and what I was thinking and what I was doing. And the main things that came out of that, some of them are certainly relevant right now, and they're actually like layered into what I just shared. But let's see, let me just get into it here. So the Zion book, big idea, how I built Tribal to be a personal development club through endurance competition. Yes, right. It's something like that. But for me, as I'm building this, like that doesn't give me enough clarity. And it's not so much about how I built Tribal to be this personal development club. It kind of is, right? Because that's like layered in. But like, to me, I need to understand the steps of how I'm telling that. Right. And one thing that I've realized as I've been oriented towards that line a little bit is that I will go to share something, I'll go to write something, and then all of a sudden I will find myself needing to give background info. And the background info will end up needing to be its own entire thing. And I've got an example of that I'll share when I get over to my Substack in a moment. But 3 more bullets here. How that is my story in entrepreneurship, how it happened on a massive scale at Zion, how it's been happening within the team the entire time, right? So all of that is true and it's in there. But for me, I needed the clarity of what I laid out. The thesis being part of the tribal team, 100x of the personal growth that comes to endurance. I actually would now, because I haven't even edited this, but I would adjust the thesis to say that participating in a tribal team race, 100x is the personal growth that comes through endurance. And I would say that that's even true of the Chattanooga 70.3 race that happened about a month after Zion. We had guys just orienting themselves in a position of service and a position of shared experience. And like, I'm thinking about Mason, who helped out my dad as my dad was cramping at like mile 9. And Mason's whole thing was, oh, well, I DNF'd my first 70.3 and now I'm having my comeback, right? That was kind of like at least how I was thinking about it. And what it ended up being was Mason actually just showing up in service really throughout the whole weekend and throughout the race specifically. And that just organically allowing his own best performance ever to come to light, right? So that's maybe something that I'm thinking about there. The story of coaching to brand to team, again, that's layered in there, but that's not the overall picture, right? And that's just things that I get to tell stories of how I've built merch, or I get to tell stories of how I built Mug Club or stuff like that. Right. So now let me just give you a look. So I've got all these different, and all these things are folders that have writing in them. So there's a shit ton here. Just this past week, I outlined all of the Zion chapters, but none of these things are written. That's why they all have an X in front of them. But I needed to see, like, what are the big events of the Zion experience, or the critical inflection points that maybe they won't all be their own chapter, but they at least want, they want significance, and they deserve, their own moment, within the book. These things above, I have written out. So this is how I started with the book outline. I thought that it was going to basically start with, I have the first selfless act here. And so I'll just click into this so you can quickly see. This is a big write-up that I did on the situation with Cam getting sick, and basically on the night before the race telling me that he needs an IV. He's not feeling very good. So this was really where I started, and I started to just draw out what are the key themes that are going on. I haven't been back into this thing to edit this up in some time. I really moved into a different direction of building, but at least, for you to just see, right, what I'm trying to share here is my process on this. All of these things, let me get back to the Zion book section. All of these things have big outlines, or they have already big write-ups. And my initial idea was that I was going to basically set the stage for oh, fuck, shit's already hitting the fan and the race hasn't even started. But then I was going to back it up to the Mo 50K. And then I was going to go on kind of a linear timeline to how the Mo happened, right? And that was, I'll click into this one. This was, I'm 6 weeks into fatherhood. My son, Jack, was born on April 20th. And this tells the story of me going out on my business building trip to meet with Zach, my business coach, Zach Homel, in Indianapolis. And then when I'm out there, all of a sudden this opportunity with the Mo shows up and happens. And so my vision for the book was that I am basically going to share kind of this critical moment before the race even starts. Then I'm going to back it up and share the timeline of what went down. But I was already kind of realizing, fuck, I need to give more backstory. In order to understand the significance of the Mo 50K, you need to know about the Do Hard Things guys. And in order to know about the Do Hard Things guys, you need to understand about Ironman Florida 2022, right? Those were the first guys that I coached to an Ironman. But in order to understand Ironman Florida 2022, well, you need to know that Zach is my business coach. And then you also need to understand how I got engaged with these guys even before I was coaching them, right? And so I was finding myself always going back and back and back. And I was like, fuck, all right, I got to add more detail here. And so that was when I started to make this section that's Ryan background. And so this gets into really just everything in my life. And I started to just give background on, my own upbringing, right? Why does my mind work the way it works, right? What are my life experiences that have me oriented towards doing really big things, right? Or feeling complacent in life at times, and wanting more in life at times. Sharing everything from what I said, right, as we're bringing it back to these 4 foundational things, right? So number 1 is Ryan's endurance journey, right? So that feeling of complacency, that feeling of I wish I could be doing more in life, or I think I can be doing more in life. So I started to list out all this stuff. Another very valuable thing for me was that on that call with Matt Bank and Goldstein, I think that Matt Bank had really just seen, I think I had showed him this, and none of these are titled about anything related to Ironmans, right? Or 70.3s. And so Matt Bank was kind of wondering, like, well, is this just all about ultra marathons? You know, one thing he specifically said was that he's like, I'm interested in, like, how did you even get your first 70.3 client? Like, how did you even do that? And what was that experience like? And so that oriented me more towards like building all of this stuff out. Let me also give you a real example here of how I think that I'm going to be talking about one thing, and all of a sudden I'm having to give background information and it's becoming a totally different thing. So this post, Tribal Origins, so I guess sidebar, I'm forcing myself to publish on Substack when a lot of these are ready so that I have something going live and I can get some kind of feedback. But this post, and I'm calling them all Tribal Origins, this post, this was supposed to be about how I signed my first clients and how I even started coaching online. But I found myself needing to explain or wanting to give background detail. And like, okay, well, you know, sure, like you put out a post looking for clients, right? But like, how did you build a following before that? What was it like to start sharing content on the internet? You know, what strategies did you use? Like, how did you make any of this stuff happen? And so this post, you know, without reading every single word here, basically goes into like my early days of sharing content online. I've got a section right here that talks about my mindset and talks about how, you know, I have this this frame that I've called Northeast negativity, which I used to have a ton as far as my mindset. Like being from the Northeast, it's so easy to just talk shit on everything, be self-deprecating. You know, Philly hates New York. New York hates Boston. Everybody thinks they're better than DC. Philly also kind of hates itself too, but like since we're our own, like we think that that's okay and that's cool. And that idea of what I describe as Northeast negativity, like that was a big part of my mindset growing up. And I wanted to work for Barstool. I wanted to write for Barstool. That was my main goal when I was younger. And I tried to write online. I had a couple of blogs. This photo is from me fucking passing out blogs at Titans training camp when I lived in Nashville. But I had a little bit of that Northeast negativity. I was trying to be El Prez. I was trying to be Big Cat. I was trying to be KFC. And so I wasn't authentic to myself at all in that process. And so nothing ever worked for me. Nothing ever worked at all. I got to go grab my my computer charger. So I'm pausing this real quick. All right, we're back in here. So, building off of the Northeast negativity mindset, a big part of me learning to create content online was like really forcing positivity onto myself and really using the ability to share on Twitter and tweet every day and basically speak a new mindset into existence. Like that was a huge part of my process. And again, as I'm like, I want to write a book that other people can see part of themselves in or that they can resonate with. Like that whole shift in mindset was fucking huge, was absolutely huge for me. And some other things that I want to go into are like sharing. You know, it's really easy to just say that, oh yeah, well, I was using my Twitter to just talk about what I was doing and share what I was learning. But I see a lot of people doing that online and their content is boring as fuck. So like what did I do that worked, right? And it's not like I have some huge cheat code, but there are a couple of things that I did that really took off for me. First and foremost was my carnivore versus plant-based diet challenge. So I ate all carnivore for the month of January, all plant-based for the month of February. I tracked my Whoop data. I shared my results all the time. I got my blood work drawn, and people drew interest to that. And the first clients that I signed for weight loss, they both referenced that challenge that I put myself through as something that caught their attention and made them just interested in what I was doing. And then also just put me into a position of authority and of credibility, right? And I also think about the fact that I did that challenge, and that set me up to be connected to Zach Bitter. Zach Bitter, the 100-mile world record holder for fastest 100-mile. I was on his podcast as a direct result of doing that challenge. And things like that, sharing the early podcast that I got on, like, I might not need all of that information in the book, right? Like, who knows? But I at least need to get that out because that stuff is all really relevant to my story. And I'm also thinking about, who do I want reading this book and what do I want them to take away? Well, a huge portion of people that I'm thinking of as like my target market are people who want to build what I've built, right? Like, there are people who have been coaching for decades longer than me who have not built what I've built. And there are people who have been coaches for 20 plus years, and there are things that they are doing and that they've always done, that potentially hearing about my experience could shift their perspective. Whether it's on how to sign new clients, whether it's how to build more community amongst your team. Like, these are the things that I want to be able to share from my experience, because they're also like valuable things that I've learned. Okay, so let me get back to just like this overall thing. Some of those are on my backstory, but I also do have like, the endurance accelerator, right? So this was a big moment in the team's just evolution. This was the thing that I basically brought Goldstein in to help me craft, is like this online course. That was the vision. And I spent fucking 7 months trying to perfect it. As soon as I finally launch it, I realized that the needs of the guys inside are completely different than what I had built. So I end up just building the whole thing on the fly. So what's the fucking lesson? Get it live and get it going, right? There you go, right? Like, I spent so long trying to perfect all of these slides and perfect my endurance philosophy and tell these different stories from the athletes that I had worked with, from the Do Hard Things guys. And all that stuff was relevant, right? And the background knowledge helped me. But I literally got into that group and every single dude wanted to do a 70.3 on a short timeline. And so I was like, fuck, scrap all this shit. Here's what you guys got to do. Let's go. And so, the endurance accelerator, then how that led to Muncie 70.3. And so we have more team themes coming back, right? So being open to opportunity creates new and bigger opportunity. Well, once I got into the accelerator and actually got that live and got it going, I had two guys, Aaron Burke and Logan Turner, who were doing Muncie 70.3. All of a sudden, that meant that I had like 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 athletes, right? Like, I think that they might have been 4 or 5 and 6 that were towards that race. I already had a few. But then once they were going, I was able to direct a couple other people and get it to 7 or 8. And then all of a sudden, it made sense for me to go to the race, right? And have that be the first team race. And then things along that journey of getting the guys organized on calls towards then the in-person experience, right? So giving them that time online to build connection and be familiar with each other and then have the team race. I used all that stuff to help put on the Zion experience. So like, these are the things in the backstory that I want to be sharing, as far as like, back to that evolution of like how I built a team around the idea, right? Because the team races, well, they're kind of everything. Okay, let me pause here. I'm going to show you my Substack and what I'm doing on Substack right now. Okay. So this is, let me just go to the homepage of my Substack. So Tribal Journal, I renamed my Substack. It was Endurance Philosophy, but I just wanted to switch it up. And I have created this tab called Zion Book right here. And I am basically using this as a live ebook. And so I am publishing chapters along the way. I'm titling them like Tribal Origins. Like, when you click on that, it'll be like Tribal Origins. I think the team motto is Born, Adapt, and Overcome. It's something like that. And I'm loading them in here. And so this is really just a way for me to hold myself accountable to actually, first of all, one is like getting shit out in the world. But number two is like, can I be creating some content in real time around all this effort that I'm putting in and all this time that I'm putting into writing? And this is how I decided to do it. I took big inspiration from, one of my endurance mentors, Gordo Byrne. He is in the middle of writing a new endurance book. and he has every single thing. I'll just go to his page here. Let me see. Gordo. I think I need to go to the homepage of Substack in general. Endurance Essentials right here. So Gordo has this Endurance Essentials ebook, and I think that this is premium. So if you pay, the $7 a month or whatever, you get access to all of this as he's building this book. And I mean, he has tons and tons and tons of information here in chapters. And so this is what I saw, and I was like, okay, this is a really simple, and also like it's a cool modern way to write a book. Like you're getting the value of sharing the info in real time. You're getting feedback on what's resonating, what's not. And so that gave me inspiration for getting some of that shit live. I will also share. So my inspiration for maybe I'll just pop over to the Amazon page to show the book in a second here. Okay, boom. So this book, To the Gorge, this is the book. I wish that I had it in front of me here. I read it and I took a shit ton of notes in it on its construction. And then my mom was here and my mom read it and my mom has it back in PA. So I don't have the physical copy, but I figured bring up the Amazon page. Who cares? This book, To the Gorge, it's very interesting to me how, I'll just get little synchronicities in life that kind of orient me towards these different goals that I have. And one is I don't listen to really any of Cameron Hanes' podcasts, but I somehow saw on Instagram that this chick, Emily Halnon, was on his podcast. I'd never heard of her. And somehow it caught my attention. And this chick basically ran the Pacific Crest Trail, the Oregon section of it from border to border. It was 460 miles. And she ran it in tribute to her mom, who passed away of cancer very suddenly, very quick from diagnosis to death. And this just came across my feed. For some reason, I gravitated to the post, right? There's a million posts that I scroll past and don't think anything of, right? And I've seen a ton of Cam Hanes posts with podcast guests, and none of them caught my attention. But for some reason, this one did. And I read this book, and this book does a really cool job of, there are the broader chapters, right? But then within each chapter, there are sections, and the section will run you through. She's basically telling two stories at once. That's what's going on. She's telling you the story of her 460-mile race, but then she's also telling you the story of her mom getting diagnosed and what going through that whole process with her to losing her mom was like. So there will be sections where it's like mile 132, and then it will say the place that they're at in the trail, and then it will talk about that. And then it will also have the next section that's like December 2021, Burlington, Vermont. That was like where her mom lived. So it'll say like the time and the place, but it will go back, and then that will tell the story of whatever was just going on in the other story that she's telling, which is like about her life leading up to that, right? And mostly her mom's diagnosis and that timeline. But there are still also sections on her upbringing, right, that give information on just who she is as a person. Because I'm not just going to pick this up out of nowhere and then just read this thing. Like I need some backstory to be engaged with the author. I need to understand more about who the author is. Why is she the way that she is? What is her interest in these things? What was her relationship with her mom like, right? Like if you're going to tell the story of running 460 miles, basically in tribute to your mom who passed away, well, it would be valuable to understand your relationship with your mom, right? So that I can have more understanding of what that means to you as the author, right? And so that is how I'm thinking about constructing this book, is I'm thinking about basically starting, maybe that Cam story is the start of the Zion book. I'm not sure what will be, but like for now, let's just say that that's the start of it, right? Like right away presenting that like something's at risk. Our 10 for 10 is at risk. Not only are we trying to run 100 miles, but we're trying to do it together as a team of 10, and we're trying to have everybody finish, right? And we haven't even started the race and we're already down to 9. So some type of phrasing around that can like present, oh shit, there's a crazy huge goal. and shit's already hitting the fan, like to draw people in. That's what I'm thinking about. But then also bouncing back to these other timelines that tell the story of me getting into endurance, telling some about my upbringing, and giving that detail from there. One of the other things that I've struggled with a little bit is I'm like, Tribal keeps rolling on. So like almost every single race could be its own book. I'm like thinking about this is the Zion book, but I'm like Chattanooga was a month later and Chattanooga could be a book, right? That was the biggest team event ever. We had 10 athletes compete, all 10 finished. I had my relationship with my dad get remended through building towards that race together and him doing his first 70.3. And he was the 10th athlete to finish that made us go 10 for 10. But I am finding more peace in the fact that like this book is just part one and I can write and will write more, right? And if you've been listening to other videos of mine, you know, right, I'm working towards putting on the first tribal trail race, the first tribal 100. And I think that it could work out really well that like this Zion story is the foundation of how that came to be, right? Because how the fuck are you going to tell the story of putting on a 100-mile race without explaining Zion? How are you going to explain Zion without explaining, right? All these things that went back and back and back. So that is just where I'm at in the process. One other big, so there are a couple of podcasts I guess I'll share. I shared that How I Write podcast. I guess I already mentioned them, but those two podcasts with Ryan Holiday and Nat Eliason, those are awesome. Nat Eliason has a book that just came out. It's coming out on Tuesday. I already have it on pre-order. It'll be here in 2 days. And it is called Crypto Confidential. And he describes it as a narrative nonfiction. So narrative, you're telling a story, nonfiction, not fake. That's how I remember nonfiction versus fiction, nonfiction, not fake. And I think that some of that could resonate with my story and how I'm thinking about sharing this. He also wrote that as a thriller. So in my thought of how I'm piecing together Zion, I'm like, I want to make this a fucking thriller. I want to make this an exciting read. Like this To the Gorge book, like I read it in like 2 days. And I don't usually read books like that. Like it was just the kind of book that just drew me in and it just captivated me and it made me want to turn the page and keep reading. And I want the Zion book to be like that. Another thing that I got from, there was a thread that I saw online that was talking about it had clips from the guy who wrote Ghostbusters, the kids books, or Goosebumps maybe. I'm not even sure. But it was this idea that the first draft is supposed to be fun. And for me, I was feeling a fuck ton of pressure to have all these writing things, right? You saw my Notion. There's a shit ton there, right? But none of it, I mean, it looks organized in the fact that I got the emojis for it and it's chaptered out. But like in terms of formatting it into that Google Doc, it's really nowhere near close. And so the idea of keeping the first draft fun, that is why I decided to shift to the Google Doc, where I've got open pages. I can draw, I can make notes, I can add taglines, I can highlight themes, I can highlight lessons, right? I can highlight the athletes. And then when I go to actually write it, it's like, oh, okay, well, these are the bones of what I'm trying to bring to life. So that is probably a good place to pause here. I didn't know how in-depth or long this was going to be. I'm pretty pumped, though. I think this is going to be close to maybe close to an hour. I've been doing these in little like clips on my recording thing, so I'm not totally sure the total time. But if you've stuck around for this, thank you so much. And we will keep moving. We're in process. Let's